All right. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to hop right into tonight's presentation as we only have 30 minutes before Zoom kicks us off the free platform, and I'd like to leave 10 minutes for questions at the end. So this leaves us approximately 20 minutes to cover all the meat and potatoes of this presentation. And if I talk at a normal speed, we will be right on time. So I will try to be slow as molasses and try not to talk really fast so that we have just enough time for everything and not too much time. Please note that this presentation will be recorded and put online immediately afterwards. So if you're uncomfortable with your image or your name showing from the Zoom meeting, now is the time to hide that information. So it was nice to see your lovely faces, but if you don't want to show your face on the video, you are more than welcome to turn off your camera at this time if you would like. If you still have questions after our booked time period and we haven't been able to answer all your questions at the end of this session, feel free to message me. You can send me a message in our class, or you can even put something in the post after I post this online after this session is done. So with that being said, I am Amy Karalik. I'll be your host for this afternoon, or I guess tonight. And this presentation is on the Tuckman model of team development. I am presenting to you from Abbotsford, British Columbia, on the unceded traditional territory of the Yamaqui First Nation of the Stolo people. So here's a little overview of what we're covering tonight. Why this topic? Groups versus teams, Tuckman's model, a model breakdown, applied practice, and then a recap. So first of all, why did I choose this topic? Well, I think it's pretty important to know about Tuckman's model as I've used it a lot over my years as a professional. I wish I knew about it earlier, even in elementary school, as it would have resolved a lot of interpersonal group and team issues, especially involving group assignments in class. I remember there was possibly a fist fight that happened in like grade 7, and we could have avoided that if we had known a little bit more about storming, forming, norming, and performing, which I'll talk about shortly here. So Tuckman's model, it impacts group dynamics, how we work in teams, and how we can deal with conflict. My first formal encounter with the Tuckman model was while taking a conflict resolution course at the Justice Institute, well into my working career. And here's hoping that some of you can find value in knowing about this model so you can apply it to your practice earlier than I did. Before we dive into this subject, we need to talk about groups and teams. To start us off, what is a group? According to the Center for Conflict Resolution from those Justice Institute references that I referred to earlier, a group is defined as two or more individuals who come together formally or informally to perform a task, share ideas, or make decisions. Groups are formed every day, and it's important to note that every time a member of a group leaves or joins a group, a completely new group is formed. This is important to know because we are going through the steps of the Tuckman model practically daily. You just might not recognize it until now, when you now have all the words and names for this particular model. A team, on the other hand, is a group of people who share a common goal. So now that we have the difference between a group and a team, we're ready to get started. So let's chat a little bit about Tuckman's model. It's what we're all here today for, right? In 1965, Dr. Bruce Tuckman, an educational psychologist, developed a theory about how groups work, and still to this day, this theory still stands up. This is a picture of what Dr. Bruce Tuckman looks like, by the way, and he died not that long ago in 2016. So that was news to me, and it's nice to see his smiling face to attach to this model. Known as the forming, storming, norming, and performing model, or the Tuckman model, or Tuckman's model, it outlines the four stages that groups and teams go through during their existence. Some may tack on the adjourning stage as a fifth stage at the end, which is part of Tuckman's model. It's just a later addition, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. So here's the sweet and simple breakdown of the Tuckman model. Each stage of team development has its own feelings and behaviors, and understanding why things are happening is useful as a basis for team conversation. I want to point out that although the stages that I'm presenting here to you today, they appear to be linear, but teams may move backwards to previous stages or could even stall at a stage and never fully realize their potential and could disband. So just keep that in mind as we're running through these different stages in the Tuckman model. So the first step or the first stage is forming. So forming is when people come together, which is sometimes what they call the honeymoon stage. People often behave nicely and are trying to make a good impression. And at this point in time, it's a good time to create a set of shared expectations, guidelines, or a team charter. You could also do like team forming activities to build trust and to get to know the strengths and weaknesses of your team members and how everyone is going to work together. Excitement and uncertainty is incredibly high during this stage, and people are looking for leadership and authority. A member who asserts authority or someone who's knowledgeable about the subject may be looked at to take control. Team members at this time are often asking questions of themselves, such as, what is expected of me? And how do I fit in here? So you can anticipate a lot of questions, either internal or external at this stage. The next stage is storming. So storming is when power and conflict arise. Emotionally, your team might have some frustration or anger that the team isn't living up to their early excitement and expectations. Participation can suffer, feelings can go underground, and people may become inauthentic and revert to behaviors to get the job done rather than working through differences. So that's kind of what I was talking about that fist fight back in grade 7. At this point in time, this is when brainstorming and breaking things into smaller steps, determining roles, and these can help carry us through this stage as long as conflict is managed constructively. Failure to address conflicts may result in long-term problems. Team performance may actually decrease in this stage because energy is put into unproductive activities. Members may openly disagree or argue on goals, and cliques may form around strong personalities or areas of agreement. The next stage is norming. So norming is when the group starts working together and there's focus and clarity about the tasks. This is when each team member, they know their role and they start working on their individual parts of the project. Emotionally, members start feeling a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more authentic. At this point in time, people are working fairly independently, so check-ins and using Gantt charts are incredibly useful. Consensus develops around who the leaders are and who is in what roles, but as the picture shows here, the harmony is precarious. So disagreements, if they reemerge, the team can slide back into the storming phase so that they can work out those difficulties. At this stage, more frequent and meaningful communication occurs, and teams may start to develop nicknames and inside jokes at this stage. It's important to note that we're talking about norms, and so it's important to understand what a norm is at this point. Norms are like rules that are implicitly understood by the team members, but the tricky part is that they're not written down normally. Norms can be things like expectations for attendance, commitment, relationships, standards, and levels of performance. However, norms are only effective in controlling behaviors when they're accepted by everyone and when they're known by everyone, which is why we suggested a team charter in the forming stage to identify the norms and to accelerate the team development process. It's nice to know what the rules are so that you can meet them. So that will definitely help move things along. So you can refer back to those expectations and that charter that you created in that forming stage. The next stage is performing. So that's when the group is operating at its maximum potential. In this little chart here, this little graph, it shows performing right at the top in terms of team effectiveness over time. So this is when the group gets stuff done, mutually agreement happens, and they have direction to complete their tasks. Accomplishments in progress are measured and celebrated during this time. In the performing step, members are highly cooperative and they have a high level of trust, are committed to group objectives, and they identify with the team. And as we've noted here recently in this area, we've seen a lot of Canucks jerseys. So you can see that people may be in one of these stages. A can-do attitude becomes visible and roles in the team may become more fluid with members taking on responsibilities as needed. The team experiences those feelings of satisfaction at this time as well. Last but not least, that last step I talked about earlier is adjourning. I mentioned it earlier that it is part of the Tuckman model, but it was added later. It was added in 1977 by Dr. Tuckman and Marianne Jensen. And that's where the group may celebrate their success, do a review of the work that was done, and then close the group. During this time, it can be an emotional time for teams, including maybe some anxiety about future roles or responsibilities, maybe some sadness for the end of their team relationship and the fact that they aren't going to be working as closely anymore in this particular project. And then also extreme deep satisfaction for completing the job with their team. So morale may rise or fall during this period, and so might productivity. So it's very interesting to see how your team will react, and definitely give extra time just in case your morale falls, and so does that productivity. So there you have it. This is Tuckman's model and or the forming, storming, norming, and performing model. So let's talk a little bit about putting this into practice. We've discussed the why and what Tuckman's model is about, and hopefully made some linkages in your brain to experiences, emotions, and behaviors you may have already witnessed in groups and teams. Now it's going to be up to you to try, apply, and share that knowledge. For me, in addition to usual learning and development activities, I also do a lot of human resources work and project management in my career. I found an interesting article online on strategic project management theory and practice for human resource professionals, which is on the screen here, while I was looking up Tuckman's model, and it points out some parallels to an individual or a team's journey to HR and project management activities. The article didn't dive too deeply into the concepts, and I will link it in my references after I post this video. That's the word for it. When I post this video, I'll have all the references, so you're free to take a look at what they have there. But I thought I'd bring it forward just in case you might find these parallels fascinating like I did. Perhaps you too can find other parallels in your own career. By the way, this is totally where I snagged some of these images for this presentation from. So Tuckman's model used in HR talks about the employee life cycle while they're in an organization. And since people join the organization and it's all just one big group or team activity, it makes sense that the employee life cycle would mirror the experiences that an individual would go through in Tuckman's model. So following this, The onboarding process would be your first step, the forming, where the HR team would be introducing that new hire to coworkers and organizational norms and roles. You'd be on your probationary period. So, this definitely would be the honeymoon period for both the employee and the employer, as everyone wants to not do that whole recruitment process all over again. The storming stage has HR dealing with conflicts and even grievances if you're in a union environment. And this generally happens after that probationary stage because, again, no one really wants to do that recruitment stage again. And people start to let their inner selves show. And so that honeymoon period is now over. The norming stage has HR professionals offering support and training to employees. Like we talked about when describing the steps to Tuckman's model, norms were generally introduced in that forming stage, in that onboarding stage. But then this is where that overlap is, where people refer back to those policies, norms, and standards. Let's face it, giving everyone all the information they need to do their job a couple weeks into their work at this new environment is like spraying them in the face with a fire hose of knowledge. So at this time, additional specific training is given to enhance what was learned previously and to enhance their existing skill sets. The performing stage has HR professionals looking at performance metrics and doing reward strategies. And HR doesn't really do much in this stage, hopefully, other than just tracking and supporting and getting out of everybody's way and letting them do their thing. And last, the adjourning stage is when HR professionals are doing exit interviews and offboarding. This could also be retirements or even managing deaths and beneficiary paperwork. And it is a little bit weird working with organizations with lifelong employees to actually see the retirements and death notices going out to staff. But the people who manage this stuff is your HR team, and that is the adjourning stage in the employee life cycle. So there you have it. I thought it was pretty interesting to see Tuckman's model applied to HR and the employee life cycle. The second application of Tuckman's model to not just the individual or group, but to a process that involves people is project management. So, project management, again, has a lot of parallels with not only the HR stuff, but also with program planning in an educational setting. So, maybe keep this in mind the next time you're planning an educational program and see if what I'm saying rings true to you. First of all, we've got forming, which is developing that initial contract and that project charter or even a scope of work, as well as enlisting the group members that are going to see that project through. Remember how we talked about doing a team charter in the forming stage earlier? There's your similarity. Storming has the managers guiding and doing conflict coaching through ideas and processes related to the project while sorting out the major kinks. Then people are assigned tasks and the activities are fleshed out step by step. Project plans are done to track all the bits and pieces that are required to be covered. And that's your overlap with program planning in education. Norming has the manager removing barriers to allow team members to contribute their specialization, stepping in when needed, but is less involved with the day to day tasks. When I introduced this concept earlier, I suggested using a Gantt chart, right? What better way to track a project or a program with so many moving parts and people? The performing stage has the manager acting as a liaison and making sure high level decisions are being made and implemented. Like HR, using this model in the employee life cycle, tracking metrics and rewarding folks is also happening at this stage. And last, adjourning has the manager celebrating team successes. So think about when a ship is being built and they smack that bottle of champagne on the hull, or the ribbon cutting ceremonies with those giant scissors. So there you have it. There's Tuckman's model in project management. Two different ways that Tuckman's model is used in real world situation, in addition to just regular application to group and team dynamics. So when you leave this class, consider where you're situated in your employee life cycle, or even B, where you're situated in any projects you have going on in your life right now. Now, I do have one more bonus applied practice thing that we can whip through quickly if you guys are interested in playing along. This is where you can participate if you'd like. I took the Tuckman's model featuring my cats as they joined our household. And so feel free to put your mics on and shout out what stage of Tuckman's model you think these cats are in after I give you a clue about what's going on in the picture. They're both alive. So the adjourning stage is not going to be happening for a while. So it's just the first 4 Tuckman model stages. Are you ready? All right. In this picture, I have my 2 cats bopping each other with their paws. This is the stage where individuals identify their roles within the group, and there is conflict. What stage am I?
Storming.
Nice. You got it. In the next one, you will find 2 cats hiding amongst a bunch of stuffed animals. There's a little bit of Where's Waldo for you in this image. And this is the stage where individuals start fitting in and start feeling more comfortable and authentic. What stage am I?
Probably norming.
Yes, nicely done.
Look at that. Look at that enthusiasm from our instructor. Perfect.
That's awesome. So in this picture, my cat is attacking the cursor on my screen, and we did want these cats for pest control. This is the stage where individuals operate at their maximum potential. What stage am I?
This is performing.
Nice, well
There we
done.
go. There we go.
And this picture, last picture, is the first day the kittens came home. This is the stage where individuals come together for the first time and are trying to make a good impression. What stage am I?
The forming stage.
Very
Perfect.
nice. All right. Well, with the new learning today about Tuckman's model, I hope you have some tools in your toolbox to recognize and apply this to your group and team projects moving forward. Perhaps you might also see some overlaps in processes or in your life, even in your career, utilizing teams outside of the examples that I've given you here today. So here's a visual recap of what we covered in this session to solidify all that fun stuff that we learned today. So why this topic? Well, because I thought it was important, of course. And, we had to choose one of the topics from the list. So here you go. We did groups and teams. Takeaways are that groups change every time someone is added or removed, and that teams are groups working towards a common goal. Tuckman's model. So this is a theory regarding group and team development, still valid, even though it was made a little while ago. Model breakdown. So it's 4 to 5 steps. It's got forming, storming, norming, performing, and then the 5th one added later on, still part of Tuckman's model, is adjourning. Applied practice. Well, one was in HR, one was in project management, and the sample one, the fun one, was, the cats integrating inside of a family unit. And last but not least, recap. And that's the end of our recap. So now it's your turn. I'm going to turn the floor over to you all. Any questions, comments, feedback on my amazing presentation skills? All right, it's your turn. Waiting for the questions.
Do you work in HR?
Well, technically I do, yes. I'm in the
Okay.
HR department. I'm
HR
in
department.
development,
Okay.
which is a subset of human resources. So yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, awesome. I very much enjoyed your presentation. My last class with Doug was on the BOPS model, and I see that you ticked all you ticked all the letters in the BOPS model, so I appreciate that. The post-assessment with the cats, that was great. Yeah, thank you for that very kind of clear, you have a very, very clear speaking voice. And, thank you for presenting everything, at a good pace and clear. I was able to pick up on everything. I know it doesn't go towards the standard of PowerPoint presentations where we're not supposed to have a lot of words on PowerPoint presentation, but my focus likes a few words, but that's probably my personal feedback as opposed to what we're actually supposed to do when we're presenting, but that's just kind of me. But I was, again, able to follow along with everything you're saying. This was great. I haven't heard about Tuckman's before, but I can easily see how I've been a part of working groups and we've gone through all those stages. And then you get invited to that meeting at the end where they serve you cookies and coffee and they summarize everything. I'm like, why are they wasting my time? But I get
Oh,
it. It's the adjourning part. It's the thank you part. It's the, celebrating accomplishments and things like that. So it was nice to see all those. I can reflect on all those pieces being a part of different working groups. So thank you very much
well, there you go. And what
for
field do
that.
you work in, if you don't mind me?
I'm in nursing.
You're in nursing. Okay,
Yes,
cool.
but I'm not bedside, so I work with the like professional practice department. So we do like consulting and
Perfect.
things like
That's
that.
cool.
But a lot of
A lot of group work.
working groups and things like that to try to, change the world
Of
one
course.
policy or one project at a time. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much. I
Right.
was happy to hear this because I saw Tuckman's mentioned on the list and I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. But it's pretty clear that a lot of people use Tuckman's model and
Yes.
it was great. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you for attending. This was great.
Yes.
Doug, do you have anything to add? You have 8 minutes left before we get kicked.
Oh, the question I have is more of just, the question, the bigger picture. When you're using Tuckman's model, what does that life cycle look for? And what are some of the issues if you're as an educator and you only have them for 1 hour or 2 hours a week over 12 weeks? What are some of the things you can do to incorporate the Tuckmans and what are some of the challenges in doing that?
Ooh. Well, it would be interesting because if you don't have them for a solid period of time, I wonder if every single time you see them, you kind of have to do an abbreviated version of the forming, maybe not so much the storming unless you have new members in your group. But yeah, I almost wonder if you're going to have to do a little bit of each or just a little reminder of each to kind of link it back to the original forming and storming and the different sections. That would be my thought. But also if you did your team charter and you had it kind of up on the wall, that might help remind everybody, this is what we agreed upon. And, doing the recaps of what you covered the previous day might help accelerate some of those needs to go back into those things. Also, maybe having a course outcome or something provided at the beginning of the class. Again, having people refer back to those things might help. But yes, what do you have some amazing
No,
insights to share?
it's often what would happen is when we take a look at Tuckman's model actually came out at the same time that Johnson and Johnson were working on the cooperative learning.
Oh,
Because cooperative learning is the most formalized type of collaborative learning.
hmm.
And so in order to work on a long-term project, like over a semester, or over a period of time, like 4 weeks, they're having to work outside of class, inside of class. They have different schedules. How do you get them to, and that's where that charter comes in, because as they move closer to the project or the presentation they're doing, they are in that performing stage. Now, sometimes they slip back a little bit, but you almost have to plan in activities which allow them to reflect on the storming,
Ooh,
reflect on the norming, and then when your mark for your group work or for this project should include how they move through those stages.
interesting.
So when they look at that and say, okay, as storming, give us an example of where you had to storm as an individual.
Hmm.
How did you handle that? Because when we look at marking group work, there's the two parts of it. There's the process and the product. So if it's a presentation, that's a product. If it's a report, that's a product. But the group work and the group dynamics is the process that leads to that. Now, that's really what you should be marking is the process and not the product.
Hmm.
Because the process impacts the product. But if you give a group mark on a product, you all of a sudden you bring hell hath no fury, because all of a sudden it's like there are people who say, just, let me do it and I'll do it for everyone because we're all going to get the same mark. Where what you have to do is you have to get them to trace this through and say, all right, what did me as an individual, that's where that pig's face also comes into play. What did I do as an individual to contribute to this project? And you get marked on it individually. And that makes a huge difference, because that's the biggest issue around group work, is it's not like, well, I have a bunch of slackers. Most people don't like group work because, you know, you're put in with a group and you have no recourse. But if all of a sudden your focus is on how you develop that emotional intelligence, how are you developing those soft skills? What was something that you had conflict? How did you solve the conflict? How did you move forward? Well, okay, when you went to the norming, what was some of the norming? Give us an example of how you created that norming contract. Oh, okay, we want people to be there, get them to go to the, how did you that contract come about? And so then from there it was performing. Well, if we look at performing is in direct relationship to the norming. Because
But I
the
guess
norms that
if
you
you're
did,
spending the time to work on the process,
that's right.
just one item and one delivery, and then you go scorched earth with everybody in your group, the plan, I guess, would be then to, you know, develop those teams and continue working with those same teams. And yeah, that makes sense.
And that way you can always go back to them and say, hey, if it went off, where did it go off? And the thinking about where it off was more important. And that's why Johnson & Johnson's cooperative learning really met a need for industry, because they really wanted people to develop teamwork, leadership skills, all of that. So cooperative learning is merely a form of collaborative learning, but it's very, very formalized. And that's why we actually have outcomes. Because if you have outcomes to mark group work, it has to be more than just participation.
Yeah.
And if it's just participation, well, then that's probably the most difficult mark to present, to defend.
No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Thank you for linking that all in together. So I was wondering, how does Tuckman relate here? So that is excellent.
There we go.
There we go.
And you have 2 minutes left.
We got 2 minutes left. Yes, but you know, I was struggling to get past the 15-minute mark because I was like cyber talking, like super fast talking. And so yeah, I'm actually pretty pleased. We did a good job. Thank you for participating, everyone. Thank you very much.
Now that was really interesting. Did you see
just get
fireworks behind me?
Yes. Did you see fireworks behind me?
No.
Just you. Okay.
Now
Well,
I wonder if it is this a new feature, because I didn't do anything. I'm gonna try that again.
no, it didn't work. And you gave me thumbs up earlier too, and I didn't see any fireworks until now.
I know, I was looking at the fireworks and I figured, oh, that must be kind of tricky.
Oh, well, there you
No
go.
idea how that worked.
Well, that's exciting. Now we're gonna have to Google and find out how the fireworks happen.
Yeah. Good old Goog. All right, take care then. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Now how do I end this darn thing? Sharing and end. Thank you. Bye.